I'm going to introduce our next guest, Peter Koechley. He's the co-founder of Upworthy in 2012, along with a longtime collaborator, Ellie. With the pair, the two of them set out to prove once and for all what's important can be also incredibly, even if it's popular, also important. To date, Upworthy community has dedicated nearly 2 billion minutes of attention to important stories focusing on a better world, ranging from criminal justice system to advertising's adverse effects on body image and to clean energy. So without further ado, Peter.
Thank you so much. Thank you, that's great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Thanks to MCON. Thanks to everyone. It's great to be in Chicago. I want to start by saying that I'm here from the media, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry because a lot of what the media does is not what the media should be doing, but that doesn't mean that the media can't be an enormous force for good in the world. And I think there are lots of people who work in the media day in and day out who are doing that good work and kind of fighting against the tide. But I wanted to spend a little time today talking about the purpose of the media and why millennials should care about it and why you shouldn't write it off and why we should all sort of join in the fight in interesting ways. So starting with what media should do, what's the purpose of media? Why is there media? I think there are two really good answers out there of the ways that media helps make society work, which I think is the kind of core goal of media, to actually make society as a whole function as a whole. The first of those is simply to inform the electorate, to actually get information out. What are policies? What's going on in the world? What are events? Just to actually share the news, the who, what, where, when, how. The next is to hold people in power accountable. This is unbelievably important, and we've never discovered anything better than journalism at actually holding corruption at bay. You know, in every free society, free press looks different, but it's always there and it's always doing the hard work of keeping people in power in check. There's a third thing that I think media can do to really, really help society actually function, and I think it's generally extremely underappreciated. Lots of people don't even consider it a role of the media, and I think it's what we do every day at Upworthy. And that's to nurture empathy within a society. So I think when you're trying to figure out how to make a society work, a lot of people think, if everyone just had the facts, we'd all make good decisions. We'd vote for the right people, we'd figure out the right policies, we'd all just, if we could just agree on the facts, we'd all agree. The one problem with that is all of human history, where that hasn't been true. And what actually happens is that people are drawn together and fight for the same goals when they consider other people as people like themselves, when they afford the same dignity to everyone in the society that you afford to the people you know. That's empathy. Empathy is a thing we all have innately. You have empathy for your family. You understand the people you love most and see most and understand their stories. You can understand what they feel, their joys. You can feel their pain. That's what we want to build throughout the society. You can sort of do that with the people you know, your colleagues, the people that went to the same school, if you root for the same team. You can kind of understand where they're coming from and you share a bond. When you go beyond that, when you go to people you haven't seen, people you haven't met, people who just seem different, and I think the default human assumption is, oh, they probably are different. Their needs and wants, they don't matter nearly as much as mine. And that, when you say it aloud, is obviously false, but that's how we live all of our lives. And I think media can do a huge amount to connect you to the plight of a protester in Hong Kong or somebody in Charleston. Media can tell those stories, bring them into your living room, onto your phone, and actually change how you think about the world. And that's what we try to do at Upworthy. We try to build the bonds of compassion, extend them more and more and more, help people see and connect to people who aren't like them, who they don't understand, who seem foreign, and build that bond. So this woman's named Ash Beckham. She's an amazing speaker. We found a video that she made and we shared it with our whole community, and it got a few million views. And the whole talk was just this really personal speech about coming out of the closet. And the point of her speech was that coming out of the closet is not just something that like gay and lesbian folks do. Coming out of the closet is a thing that we all need to do. We're all in some closet of some form or another. And so what she was doing with the speech is building the empathy. You think coming out of the closet is a thing that divides people. It's actually a thing that can bring us all together. Just as a tangent, the best part about my job and what I get to do is we get to see the letters that come in after people see the emails and the comments and other things. This was a really powerful video, and we got an email that night, or actually the next morning, from this kid who was a young gay kid struggling with his identity, and he said, I watched that video last night and it was incredibly moving. If I hadn't seen it last night, it would have been too late. We get comments like that all the time, and it's just the feeling of, can a video really change somebody's life? Can it actually affect somebody? The answer keeps being yes, over and over. I want to show a brief clip from this video, which is called Love Has No Labels.
And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. And I can't change, even if I tried, even if I wanted to. My love, my love, my love, she keeps me warm. She keeps me warm.
So what we try to do every day is find great videos and create great videos, create original storytelling that does exactly what that does, is bring people together and show the incredible power of connection and how that can transcend pretty much everything else. At Upworthy, what we're obsessed with is kind of a particular part of this, where we have a culture built around an obsession with really good storytelling, the type of storytelling that you just can't turn away from. Like somebody says the first sentence and you're hooked, you're drawn in, you're rapt, and then when it ends, you're absolutely satisfied. You're delighted and moved and transformed. We obviously don't always hit that goal, but that's what we love. And then we also love data. We are born of the internet. It's in our veins, and so figuring out how to take that really personal, subjective, artistic, side and the very hard data algorithm side and marry them is what we've spent the last 3 years doing. And we're doing it in the purpose of advancing slides too quickly. We're doing it in the purpose of trying to get people to pay attention to these important topics and to understand people of different kinds and kind of draw a tighter little world. I think it's interesting being here at MCON because my co-founder Eli and I, when we started the company, we started it thinking just what kind of media do we think people should be spending more time with? And we didn't really examine why we thought that, but we thought, oh, it should be the most important stuff. It should be the kind of stuff that when you watch, you feel like, I was my best self when I was watching that video. That connected me with what I care about most, made me feel like a better version of myself. which is not really what happens a lot of the time when you watch stuff online, where you feel like, oh, what happened to that last 20 minutes? I can't believe I was watching that. I hope no one was looking at my screen. Like, there's all sorts of like places to get stuck, and we try to be one where you're proud when you land there and you're proud when you leave. So I think that actually springs from like a very deep and important millennial trait, which is the desire that I think we all have for a little more purpose and a little more meaning, for life to be about stuff and matter, and you know, it's not just the accumulation of wealth and status and shiny things. It's actually like digging a little deeper. And I think that that's actually, when I think about empathy, and I think about, just to go real big, when I think about the history of our civilization, I think like we're at a really interesting point, and I think millennials and the kind of millennial mindset are really helping push us to a very exciting place. And I want to play another clip. I know I'm a video curator by trade, so I have 2 video clips and a short speech. But
empathy is the invisible hand. Empathy is what allows us to stretch our sensibility with another so that we can cohere in larger social units. To empathize is to civilize. To civilize is to empathize. With forage or hunter societies, communication only extended to the local tribe and shouting distance. Everyone over in the next mountain was the alien other. So empathy only extended to blood ties. When we went to the great hydraulic agricultural civilization, script allowed us to extend the central nervous system and to annihilate more time and space and bring more people together. And the differentiation of skills and the increasing selfhood not only led to theological consciousness, but empathy now extended to a new fiction. And that is, instead of just associating with one's blood ties, we detribalized and began association based on religious ties. So in new fiction, Jews start to see all other Jews as extended family and empathize with Jews. Christians start to see all other Christians as extended family and empathize with Christians. Muslims, the same. When we get to the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution, and we extend markets now to larger areas and create a fiction called the nation state. And all of a sudden, the Brits start to see others in Britain as extended family. The Germans start to see Germans as extended family. The Americans as Americans. There was no such thing as Germany. There was no such thing as France. These are fictions. But they allow us to extend our family so that we can have loyalties and identities based on the new complex energy communication revolutions we have that annihilate time and space. But if we have gone from empathy in blood ties to empathy in religious associational ties to empathy based on national identification, is it really a big stretch to imagine the new technologies allowing us to connect our empathy to the human race writ large in a single biosphere?
So that was an RSA Animate video by a professor named, I think, Jonah Rifkin. And it's, you know, I think we're at a really exciting moment. And I think like we know that empathy matters, and we know that you build it kind of circle by circle. We know that it's built by powerful storytelling. We know that videos are the most powerful unit of storytelling, the most powerful medium for storytelling that we've ever created. And then when you look at just the last 5 years, with 1.5 billion people on Facebook, with YouTube at the scale it's at, with mobile phones in the hands of billions of people, the ability for things to actually connect and reach out and unite not just some people to some people, but everyone to everyone, is actually possible and plausible for the first time ever. The idea of a circle of compassion that is not just a little bit larger, but that literally includes everyone in the world, like, is actually imaginable. It's still also crazy and somewhat unimaginable. Like, it's still the idea of caring equally for every other of the 7 billion people in the world, like, is, you know, impossible and kind of incomprehensible, and like, it's the sort of thing that might make you just like shut down and just be like, I just want to care about my dog or whatever. I have a great dog. But I think like it's actually like, when I think about why I'm in media, why I think more people should be in media, why I think that storytelling matters, getting somebody to watch a video matters, is just because the ability to get a great video to not be seen by 10 people or 100 people, but by 10 million people. The sort of video that can actually like resonate and like strike at your core and change how you think about things. Like, that's possible now. Caring about people you've never seen is more possible than it's ever been. And so even if we never get to the perfect idealized end state of truly believing the thing that's at the core of like every moral and religious and ethical code, the idea that each human life is equally and infinitely valuable and that we're all God's children, and like that's the core idea at the heart of everything. It's almost impossible to live that way, but it's possible for each of us to push ourselves another step out, to care about somebody you didn't care about yesterday, to understand a people or a struggle or a movement that you didn't care about last week. And I think that's why we do the work we do. That's why I think more people in the world should like join in the fight, and we're hiring. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Peter. Some water. So, Peter, I gotta ask you, why are people so obsessed with cat videos? What is it?
They do the darndest things. They will paw at things that you don't expect them to paw at.
We do lots of cat videos on our overnight show, and the viewer response to them is
Really?
just outrageous. I don't understand. Are we emotionally attached? Like, what is it about cats?
They have big eyes. They have they're peculiar. I don't know. We've never like distributed a cat video in the last 3 years.
Never.
So yeah.
Just kind of curious.
So
I do want to ask you, though, you talked about empathetic storytelling. How do you get people to sort of click on that link and stick with it and watch? Can you tell us some of the tips that make people stick around?
yeah, I mean, I think that it's a thing that we started with as like a big first question. It's just, how do you get people to care? And I think we start from the premise that like people are both worse and better than most people give them credit for. So I think that like everyone wants to be like their best aspirational self, but like nobody wants to be their best aspirational self like right now. Like they want to do it like sometime soon. And so partially what like our theory has been like, how do you draw them in so that when they're watching the video they feel better about it? I think that like, you know, we've sort of famously and infamously pushed the boundaries there and the limits a little. And we're in a like reining it in phase right now as we kind of redevelop our own storytelling voice. But you know, I think there's a lot of different techniques. Our new editorial director, Amy O'Leary, who we hired from the New York Times, and she's just like one of the best people I've ever worked with in my life. She's just obsessed with that exact question. So there's the like, just start telling the story and then people can't like, we've experimented with headlines and other things where you just start telling the story and it kind of doesn't even make all that much sense, but you're just in it and you want to drive forward, where you pull out the most interesting quote, you pull out just like the heart of the issue. So there's a lot of different ways, but we're constantly experimenting and changing.
So there's a question, does the media also cause deeper societal rifts by focusing almost exclusively on negative stories rather than positive?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. The whole like, if it bleeds, it leads mentality of newspapers, largely newspapers, but also TV news as well. Like, it doesn't play as well in social media. I think like one of the interesting things about creating Upworthy, I used to be at The Onion and I used to be at MoveOn.org in two very like different lives beforehand. And the dynamics that make people share are very different than the dynamics that make people like buy a newspaper off the newsstand.
That's so interesting.
So we focus a lot on like the emotion after you're done reading. So if you leave feeling inspired or outraged, just anything active and energized, then you're more likely to share. Whereas I think, you know, the history of newspapers is, if you read to the end of the story, you know, the inverted pyramid, the end of the story is the least interesting stuff. Like they expect you will have dropped off. Like it's a totally different mindset. So
You've got to hook them from the beginning.
yeah. So we've never really. I mean, we publish a lot of stuff that touches on really hard, challenging issues for which there's no easy answer. But we generally try to have a somewhat optimistic take. We want to leave people feeling like, yeah, there are real problems, but there's also something to do about it. I really liked what Jessica was saying about the like what's working section on HuffPost. Like that stuff is great, and that stuff does a lot better online than 4 dead in a car crash or whatever. Like we've never reported on like a plane crash happened.
Right.
It was a statistical anomaly. You shouldn't be scared of flying. We'll put it on the front page and freak you out anyway. Like that's not what we do.
But the news does that. I mean,
Yeah,
it just
totally.
constantly rings that bell. Here in Chicago, there was a local station that decided to just only tell happy news, and the ratings tanked.
Really?
Yeah, that didn't do too well. But you're saying it's the reverse on social media, that people actually want to feel good.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to still be surprising, you know, but like it's got to be, you can be blandly, fluffily happy in a way that doesn't catch people's attention and just seems predictable. But I do think something that like, I don't know, when I read too much news, I feel like, oh, I just want to like go back to bed.
Sort of depressing.
Yeah, and I feel like if you actually, that doesn't do any good. Like it's good to get that information out there, but the feeling of, when you finish reading something or watching something and you have that feeling of like, the world is really challenging, there are really big problems, they're intractable, the people who are trying to solve them are probably making them worse, and like, it's just like, it's so disheartening, and like, I just don't, like, it's important to report the news, but I don't get the impact that has seems like it's actually largely negative on people as people.
Is there ever a subject that you felt was difficult to merge empathy with the story?
It's a good question. Yeah, I mean, some of the things we do are like a little, empathy is one of the main themes of what we do, but it's not I think there are lots of things we do where we're more focused on the topic itself, or here's actually how healthcare costs work, and we try to make it engaging and interesting and fascinating in whatever way, but it's not like, we do a lot of stuff that's not quite empathy, that's more in the like, informing people, getting people to care about stuff. So there are definitely issues that are kind of outside of that.
Someone at Upworthy said that you guys are willing to break the rules of journalism. Mm-hmm. What do you do that you feel that traditional media doesn't do?
We're willing to admit that we care about things, which is a big thing. Like I understand the history of impartial journalism, and I think it's led to a lot of really great fearless reporting. It's also just very weird to be like, I've covered the environment beat for 20 years. I've like read everything about this. I'm deeply versed on it, and I have no opinion. Like maybe it's all nonsense, or like maybe climate change is baloney, or maybe it's like a huge cataclysmic problem, and who knows? Yeah. Different sides disagree. like that's just a weird mental state to be in. That's not like authentic. So we just at the beginning said, we want to be truthful. We have like full-time copy editors and fact checkers. We want to make sure to be like, the skepticism at the heart of that I think is really good. But we're also willing to say like, we're writing about this because we think it's outrageous and we really care and we think you should too.
What advice do you have for nonprofits and associations about using social media and videos to gain support and engagement with their audience? It's so hard if you don't really have a platform, or you're just trying to build up your platform. How do you get those followers and people?
Well, we just redid our search on our site. So you can just go to Upworthy and just search our site for your topic and then share that with your followers. That works well. For us too. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, just looking hard for other well-told stories out there is how we started. We started with a very small team, like the size of probably many nonprofits communications team now, and just really looked for things that we thought were about issues that we cared about and would connect with people. I think a place that nonprofits sometimes need to push themselves is, sometimes you're in really deep in a particular issue area, and the distinction between two phrasings of how to talk about an issue matter a lot to you. And then you look for videos that are great that also use your exact messaging guidelines, and there just aren't any. So I remember early on, when we started in 2012, all of the groups fighting for marriage equality really wanted to say marriage equality. And we found that like saying gay marriage tested better. And it wasn't like the latest best absolute, like from within the movement phrasing of it,
Yeah.
but actually it was how normal people talked about it, and so we would talk about it that way in a way to connect with a larger group. And I think like sometimes nonprofits can hinder themselves by being a little too narrow. Yeah.
I can't let you go without asking about 2016 because of your
Yeah.
move on. You helped in 2008 raise something like $10 million. You're part of a group that helped with that. What do you think that the candidates of 2016, what are the lessons learned from the last election campaign to galvanize people on social media, particularly millennials?
It's a really good question. As I was driving down here today, I was listening to Obama on the WTF podcast, which for comedy nerds out there is a wonderful Mark Maron podcast, and was hilarious to listen to President Obama on it.
Where he used the N-word, right?
He did use the N-word.
Yeah.
He did use the N-word. Obama did, not luckily Mark Maron. I mean, I think that strategy is really interesting. Like the going to people where, like reaching out into the communities, into the various communications platforms. I think probably both candidates, or all of the 45 candidates there are, we'll all try to do that, and I think it's a good strategy. It like puts them off their game a little, which makes it more interesting for us and more authentic and more interesting.
Do you ever see yourself going back on the campaign trail at some point? Or?
No. I mean, I've never actually worked on a campaign, but from all I've heard, it's a thing that you should either do 0 times or 1 time. Yeah.
So he's not available for anyone listening. Anyone with presidential candidates? We want to thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Great
It's been
talk.
great.
Thank you. Thank you.